Well, I am Sharon Cline here with Jeff Foxworthy. Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, and I know that you've been friends with Rhubarb for quite a while.
You know what? I'll tell you an interesting story. The first time I ever did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the same week I did Rhubarb's radio show for the first time. Did like The Tonight Show like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and Rhubarb on like a Thursday or Friday. And that weekend, my dad was visiting, and he goes, "You've had quite a week, hadn't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let me ask you something. What's Rhubarb really like?" He didn't care anything about The Tonight Show or Johnny Carson. He just wanted to know what Rhubarb was really like. So, yeah.
So how was he?
You know what? He was so kind. And you know, to me, he put me on the radio before people even knew who I was. And I would see him. He was not only great at what he did, he had a little bit of that Johnny Carson thing. He didn't try to top people. He just let people be themselves on there and kind of let them tell their story. But you'd also see behind the scenes, like when you would be in commercial break and somebody would call up and they would say, "Rhubarb, I got a buddy that needs a wheelchair." And he'd be on the phone trying to locate some guy a wheelchair. And then you'd come back on the air and you'd talk about whatever you were doing. You go next commercial break and he'd go back to working on that wheelchair. And so I thought, not only is this guy great at what he does, he's got a great heart. I mean, he just kind of loved on people all the time. So.
He does that for us as students as well. I have yet to have heard him say that someone has a dream and that they can't reach it. He's always like, yes, in this industry you can do it. And it's rare to find someone, I think, who's successful in that way, to believe in you enough to give you the confidence to really go for it. It's unusual.
And every one of us, I mean, whether it's you or me or Rhubarb, yeah, you know, I kind of have the theory nobody really thinks they're going to make it in the business. We just start off doing it because we love doing it. I remember when I was doing my radio countdown show, I was interviewing Alan Jackson one time, and it was his second greatest hits album. And I said, "Alan, did you ever think you would have one greatest, much less two, but one?" And he said that. He said, "You know, I just wanted to play music. And then when somebody paid me to do it, I was floored. And then when somebody bought it, I was floored." And so I tell people that, chase your dreams. Never in my wildest imagination did I think that I would be able to make a living making people laugh. You know, and when I took that chance and quit my job to do it, I really thought, well, if I could get away with this for a couple of years, wouldn't that be great? Because I'd have something to tell my grandkids one day. And a couple of years has turned into 30. So,
how does it feel when you're up on stage and you have those moments where there's like this one pause before you know they're going to get the joke and then they really get it? Is it an eternity, or is it just, oh, I love that feeling when it finally hits?
You know the best feeling. Bill Cosby told me one time. He said, when you got them is when you pause and there's not one sound in the room. There's nobody coughing. There's nobody getting up. It's just dead silence, waiting for what you have to say next. And it is a great feeling, you know. And it's especially some guy like me that's on the backside of the career. As I've kind of learned to savor it, you know.
What do you mean backside?
I've just been doing it a long time, you know. It's kind of a young man's game. I still love doing it, but it's, you know, my wife said to me, she said, "You need to remember what this feels like to make a building full of people laugh, because it's not going to go on forever." And so I try to heed her advice and just kind of go, wow, I got a cool job.
I think it's funny when people get so bogged down with the daily life that to have a moment where they do kind of forget for a little while what that pain feels like and kind of really feel joy for a little while, it must be very satisfying.
You know, it's I always said that laughter is kind of like the release valve that keeps the boiler from exploding. I mean, we all have crazy lives and crazy relatives and stress. I mean, we just live in a world where there's very little quiet time. So
especially now with the internet and everything.
Well, internets and phones that, you know, I mean, you don't have quiet time to diffuse. And so the coolest thing I get at the end of the night was when somebody comes up and says, "I haven't laughed like that in 3 years." And you're like, oh, good, because you probably needed to. Laughter is an important part of life. It kind of it makes you know everything might be all right.
I like too that part of what you do is joy and laughter, but you can kind of marry the idea of something significant and serious in someone's life and kind of put them together. It really does temper how serious this leukemia and lymphoma is for people.
It's extremely serious. I mean, and it's, you know, for me, I've been working with kids with cancer for close to 30 years. Been chairman of the Duke Children's Hospital in North Carolina, all their fundraising things for over 15 years, and the thing that you see is these diseases, they don't just affect a kid, they affect mom and dad, and suddenly mom quits working and she's living in a hospital room for a year, and then brother and sister who are now living with grandparents because dad's working 2 jobs to pay for this and mom's sleeping in a chair, and it's just the ring, it's far reaching. I mean, and so it is serious stuff, and it's funny for me to go into a kid's room and they'll have one of my videos or one of my records or one of my books, and you know, when you're making it, you don't think about that end of it, that
Just working.
You're just working, but you know, somebody will say, hey, we read that book every night because that gives us a few little moments of escape from this. But that's what life is. You know, people always say to my wife, is he funny all the time? And she'll say, no, a lot of times he's funny, but he can be serious or he can be sad or he can be, which is kind of all the components of life.
Being a human.
Nobody's funny all the time, you know?
Well, I want to thank you so much for being part of such a worthy cause, and I feel really lucky to have met you today, and I appreciate your time. Jeff Foxworthy, thank you.
Well, I feel honored to be Rhubarb's friend, so it all works out.
Oh, well, that's awesome, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you.